So in the 1800s, you could get paid to be a garden gnome. Human gnome enthusiast Professor Jelly here, and yes, in times past, rich people would get up to all kinds of shenanigans. But one of the most interesting was having your very own druid. Yes, your very own live-in professional hermit to be a societal outcast at your beck and call. Now some of you watching may be like, now this sounds like the job for me. But as we'll learn, being a full-time hermit wasn't always what it was all cracked up to be. The ornamental hermit phase had a very gradual development. So while the exact origins of the trend can be a bit murky, the most commonly agreed upon story is that the tide of public opinion on gardens and estates began to change around the 1700s, from the extremely proper landscaping of old to more natural looking gardens and paths. Now granted, these new designs were just as meticulously engineered and maintained as the old ones, but they were designed to look more authentic. And one of the surefire ways to show that, hey, this isn't your father's 10,000 acre estate, was to build a folly. What is a folly? Just listen to this. So you would give some local layabouts a basket of turnips or something, and they would build you an already destroyed castle. These things were fantastic. It was a pre-built ruin, and one of the greatest hits on the folly charts was an old-fashioned hermit hole. Authentic hermits had lived on large estates and church lands in southern Europe for years, but these hobbit holes were likely originally designed as getaway retreats for their landowners. But as time went on, they became more and more ornamental until it actually just turned into a year-round spirit Halloween. The hermitage would be filled with all kinds of druidy things that implied the presence of a wizard-like individual. Potion bottles, skulls, stuffed alligators, crystal balls, Gregorian chant CDs, live, laugh, love, the works. It was all going good. But then somebody was like, what if we go deeper? And so, in much of the same way that rich people today spend like $40,000 on shiny rocks from Gwyneth Paltrow to gain spiritual enlightenment, these land barons would scout high and low across the countryside to get their very own holy man to live on their estate. Prophet would receive food, board, and a stipend, and in exchange would dole out nuggets of hard-earned philosophical wisdom to the generous landlord. Now, as you can probably imagine, it didn't take people too long to find out that there wasn't, that many bona fide oracles walking around, so pretty soon people started to, let's say, lower the requirements to entry. A very interesting example of this was noted English botanist Gilbert White, who was able somehow to convince his brother Henry to become his garden hermit. And I really hope that he never brought it up that, hey, this is my blood relation. It was always just, and for tonight's entertainment. One of the reasons why it was kind of hard to get a good hermit were the extreme qualifications that were put on a few of these positions. Some estates were content to have their garden hermit just put on the Merlin hat and pull the shilling out of a kid's ear whenever guests were over. However, some poor sods, like the people who had to work for the Honorable Charles Hamilton, basically were in the original Squid Game. The potential hermit would be provided with the standard hermit robes, and never under any circumstance would he be allowed to cut his hair, stray beyond the limits of Mr. Hamilton's grounds, or exchange one word with another servant. If the applicant was able to last 7 years without breaking a single rule, he would be awarded the equivalent of over $80,000 in today's money. But if he broke a single stipulation, he wouldn't get a penny. The first applicant lasted 3 weeks before they found him at a pub. Due to the difficulty in trying to find good applicants, landowners started putting in advertisements in papers to try and find potential hermits, and at least one guy put in an advertisement to become a hermit. A young man who wishes to retire from the world and live as a hermit in some convenient spot in England is willing to engage with any nobleman or gentleman who may be desirous of having one. Any letter addressed to S. Lawrence, postpaid, to be left at Mr. Auden's number 6 Coleman Lane, Plymouth, mentioning what gratuity would be given, and all other particulars will be duly attended. We unfortunately don't know if he got any responses, but can you imagine if we had this job today, the legions of neckbeards who would be applying to get paid to not bathe or talk to people? We would have to have nothing less than an NFL draft to select the winners. One of the most famous garden hermits was Father Francis, who lived at Hawkstone Park. He would sit inside his cabin offering spiritual advice to all who would visit. He was so popular that the owners of the land had to build a pub just to service the amount of pilgrims coming to see him. After Father Francis passed, he was so missed that the landowners built another Father Francis. The mechanical monk would be magically manipulated by a hidden worker into making him believe that old Francis was still kicking. But sometimes you just can't replace the real thing, as evidenced by one traveler who said, "The face is natural enough, the figure stiff and not well managed. The effect would be infinitely better if the door were placed at an angle of the wall and not opposite you. The passenger would come upon St. Francis by surprise, whereas the ringing of the bell and the door opening into a building quite dark within renders the effect less natural." And I guess that would have to make the fake Francis the first filthy Frank. Eventually though, the ornamental hermit grew out of style, in no small part due to the difficulty in trying to find someone who was willing to subject themselves to solitary confinement. So people just started putting out actual garden gnomes, and that kind of seem to accomplish the same goal. But the art of being a hermit is not quite dead just yet. Fairly recently, a priest had to choose between 50 applicants for their open position at a cliffside cell above an Austrian town. Who knows, one day we may even get back to Jeff Bezos having his own personal Merlin. This has been Professor Jelly. If you like this video and you want to see more like it, make sure to subscribe. Thank you.